My name is Jesse Gray, Performance Manager with Vin Solutions, and I'm here today to talk to you about remodeling your CRM and upgrading for future success. Now, before we get started, I want to take just a moment to tell you a little bit about who I am. I started my automotive career humbly as a lot attendant, and over the course of 15 years in the retail automotive space, I ended up becoming the sales director for one of the largest Toyota stores in the US. My goal today is to take some of the expertise and best practices I've acquired in my retail automotive career and pair that up with the expertise and best practices I've acquired in my last few years with Vin Solutions to help you find more car deals. Now, if that sounds good, let's get started. So when I think about the CRM, I like to think of it as our house because it's where all of our customers live. And just like our house, sometimes it gets dirty and things need to be updated. Well, when that happens, we don't throw out the whole house and start from scratch. We upgrade and update as needed. And the best part is, just like updating your house increases its value, so does updating your CRM. And ultimately, that means a better return on your investment. So we're going to focus on a couple of key upgrades we can make right now that will pay dividends in both the short and long term, and ultimately help you sell, service, and buy more vehicles. Now, some of the things we're going to cover today, you already know, but knowing and doing are two different things. There is no silver bullet. Nothing is going to solve all of our issues. But when you're thinking, I already know this, ask yourself, am I actually doing it? So on the agenda today, we're going to be talking about onboarding and training. This will make sure your team has the skills and tools necessary to get the job done. We're going to talk about activities and processes. This is ensuring that the right person is on the right job and has the blueprints on what needs to be done. We're going to talk about how a clean set of customers equals a clean CRM. Having a clean and organized house makes it easy to find what you need when you need it. We're also going to talk today about refreshing our email templates. Just like a fresh coat of paint on your house improves the overall first impression, so does having good email templates. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit today about performance management. This is like a trusted contractor who can help navigate the ins and outs of your specific remodeling needs. So let's go ahead and get started by talking about upgrading our salespeople's skills. So imagine you're a brand new salesperson and it's your very first day at the new store. You're excited, you're nervous, and you're not sure if you made the right career choice. You walk in and you meet your manager for the very first time, and he says, "Welcome aboard. Let's get you trained up." He walks you out to a senior salesperson and says, "Hey, buddy, would you show our green pea how to use the CRM?" Well, since the senior sales rep was busy doing absolutely nothing, he begrudgingly agrees. He then proceeds to spend the next 5 minutes showing your brand new sales rep how to add a customer, how to add a vehicle, and how to log a call, and thus concludes our training. Well, is this really how we want to set our new salespeople up for success? And the question then becomes, why spend all the money on the CRM every month if we're not going to teach our people how to use it? I'd like to think that if I ordered a $1 million supercar and had that delivered to my house, and upon delivery, I found out that that vehicle was a manual transmission and I couldn't drive it, well, I certainly wouldn't let it sit in my garage and collect dust. I would get the necessary training to be able to enjoy the car. So why are we even talking training? Well, salespeople can be our biggest asset and our biggest liability if we don't give them the tools they need to get the job done. So when should we train? Well, training really never ends. There's a good starting point, and that's when we hire somebody. But think about your service technicians at your dealership. When they came out of mechanic school, they had the skills and tools necessary to repair the cars of that day. But as time went on, the cars changed and they evolved. And the mechanic skills and tools needed to change and evolve so that they could continue to repair the cars. Well, we didn't stop training them on day one. We continued to invest in their development. And we need to take that same approach with our salespeople. So what we're going to talk about today is to have a plan for training and some of the tools that we can utilize right now that will have an immediate impact in getting your team the skills they need. So the first thing that we want to talk about today is our online video training. Now, this can be accessed in Vin Solutions in our e-Academy. Now, these are short, interactive training videos that will have an immediate impact on teaching the basics. These videos are all less than 15 minutes long, so they don't require a large time investment from your sales team. They're interactive, so they're going to help your salesperson develop muscle memory and keep them engaged. These can be accessed anytime or anywhere with an internet connection. And at the end, there is a skills assessment that allows you as managers to see that your salespeople have completed the training and allows the salespeople to spot check their progress and know where they need to improve. And the best part about this is there's absolutely no cost. Now, the next option that we offer is VinSolutions Live Virtual Training. This is offered 5 days a week at no cost to you on a variety of different subjects. Anything from our mobile application to things like Target Pro or our virtual assistant. Now, these are great because these classes are designed for all users on your team, anyone from sales to BDC to administrators. We do limit the class size to only 25 attendees. And in my experience, I found most of the classes only have about 10 people. So this allows your team to address their specific questions. And this is a great way to improve utilization across all teams and all areas of the CRM and invest in that ongoing training that we do with our service technicians, but with our salespeople. Now, the final option here is VinSolutions offers in-person training, and that brings a trainer to your store for the face-to-face engagement that many dealerships prefer. Now, unlike the other two options, the dealership does cover the travel and expense for the trainer who's coming out to their store. Now, this can be set up on an as-needed basis for 2 or 3 days, depending on your store's specific needs, or this can be set up as reoccurring quarterly training. And this is really great if you want to establish a consistent training program to make sure your new hires are constantly being brought up to speed on all of the tools within the CRM and that your existing staff stays abreast of any changes. This could also be extremely valuable if you're a store that has high turnover. Now, the best part of this is as a management team, you get to choose what will be covered, and that allows you to address your store's most urgent training needs. Now, I have a store in California that recently came out of training, and after about 8 months of using the CRM, they realized that the team was using it pretty darn well, but there were some places that utilization was falling short. They decided to invest in bringing some trainers out for 3 days to the store. And what they found is this improved the overall team utilization, and the following month, they saw a 6% increase in sales. So as we finish upgrading our salespeople skills and training them, we need to make sure that they have accurately set up user profiles. And that means having accurate hours and alerts set up. So think like a customer for a minute. You just went online. You picked out a car and you requested some additional information from the dealership. You click the submit button and you wait for a response. Well, now a few minutes has gone by and now it's a few hours and there's still no reply. Well, that probably doesn't make you feel very warm and fuzzy about doing business with the store. And that type of thing happens daily at most dealerships. Now, one of the reasons this happens, and something that I notice frequently, is that salespeople don't have proper hours set up on their user profile. Well, why is this important? Well, our CRM assigns leads based on who is on shift and ready to respond to a customer. So if we take a look at the example here, on the left, you'll see an example of incorrectly set up salesperson hours. Now, this is a rather extreme example, but in this circumstance, the sales reps marked off every single day. Because the sales reps marked off every single day, the system will never assign them a lead because it thinks they're never working. The opposite of this can be true, and I see this often as well, where we have a sales rep scheduled open to close 7 days a week. Now, they're probably not working all of those days, so there's a good chance they're going to get a lead delivered to them when they're not actually in the store. So we need to make sure that we always have proper hours set up, and to do that is very easy. The example on the right shows us what proper hours look like. Now the system knows exactly when to assign that lead to that sales rep and who is on shift and ready to work with that customer right now. So now that we've got the hours set up, we need to take a look at the alerts. But before we do that, I want to talk about one of the consequences of not having proper alerts set up for our salespeople. Let's say, for example, a customer replies to a salesperson's email, and the salesperson doesn't have alerts set up to let them know that this has happened. Well, your sales rep probably isn't in front of their computer all day long. Where are they? Well, they could be anywhere. They could be out on the lot with the customer. They could be off running to go get food. Heck, they could be in the circle with a bunch of other salespeople smoking and joking. Either way, it doesn't matter. They have no idea the customer's waiting for their reply. Well, now hours later, they see the response from the customer and they attempt to reach out. Well, ask yourself, is this really the experience we want for our clients? Even worse, what happens when the customer gets frustrated waiting for a reply and they reach out to your competitor? Well, if they're set up and ready to do business, we lose. So how do we fix it? Pretty simple. If we take a look at the example on the left, this is what it looks like when a sales rep does not have alerts properly set up. All we need to do to rectify this is, looking at the example on the right, select either email or text alerts for the customers. Now, I would recommend text alerts because most of your sales reps have their phone in front of them all the time. But by doing this, we're going to make sure that our salespeople have the right hours so that the system is always assigning leads to the person who's on shift and ready to handle the customer. Having proper alerts set up is going to allow the salesperson to know immediately when they're assigned a new lead or a customer replies back to a text or an email. And both of these are going to improve our response time and customer interaction. And that ties really nicely into our next topic. So our sales team is now trained and they have the skills to navigate the CRM and work with the customer. They're getting alerts so they know when they have a new lead and they know when a customer is trying to engage with them. Well, now we need to make sure we're delivering the right lead to the right person and asking that person to follow up with the customer in the right format at the right time. I'm going to make a bold statement here. I believe poor lead assignment and follow-up processes are costing your store money right now. And I want you to think about some of the ways it could be costing you money. I think of three things immediately: lost current business, lost future business, and lost salesperson efficiency. Well, every lead is a potential to sell, service, or buy a vehicle from a customer. We have to ask ourselves, are we poisoning the well of future opportunity? So there's two areas that we want to focus on as we look to upgrade our CRM. And that's what we do when a lead arrives and how we follow up with that lead once it's here. So have you ever looked at your lead response time and noticed you had leads that had gone hours or maybe even days without an attempt at follow-up? Well, you're held accountable by your boss for lead follow-up. So you throw your hands up in the air and you say, well, how could this have even happened? Well, now when you inspect the lead, you realize the lead was assigned to a person that was not even on shift or had never had, supposed to have had that lead to begin with. Well, has this ever happened to you? I bet it has. But remember, this is the customer experience as well. And poor processes lead to poor customer service. And that's our business. So what we want to talk about today is assigning the right lead to the right person. And the first way we're going to do that is we're going to make sure that leads are only assigned to salespeople that are on shift and that we have lead assignment rules that follow our store's open and closed hours. Now, we've just taken the time to set up our salespeople's hours so the CRM knows who's working and when they're working. Now we need to tell the CRM what to do during open hours and closed hours. So in the example here, when a lead comes in, the CRM is going to ask, is the store open? Well, if the store is open, it's going to look at the salespeople's schedule, and it's going to assign those leads accordingly to the salespeople who are on shift and ready to respond to the customer now. If the store is closed, it's going to skip over that rule and say, hey, look into the future and see who is opening the store on the next business day and assign the leads to them. Now, as we all know, the faster we reach out to a customer, the better chance we have to make contact with them. The next thing we want to talk about is making sure that we're assigning the leads based on the lead type or the lead source or the vehicle type to a specific set of users or people. Now, a lot of people don't know that Vin Solutions has the ability to process leads and assign them to your team based on the type of car. For instance, something like a new or used vehicle. Now, if you're like a lot of stores, you may have a split new and used car department. And when a new car lead comes in, you probably don't want your used car sales team handling it because generally they don't have the same kind of product knowledge that a new car salesperson has. On that same note, we probably don't want used car leads going to used car salespeople because at the end of the day, they're not usually as good at overcoming those specific used car objections. So what we would recommend is to assign new car leads to the new car team and the used car leads to the used car team. Now, another example could be a lead source. I like to use the example of USAA. Most people are familiar with USAA. They service current and former military members and their families. Well, I bet right now at your dealership, you have some current and former military members. And we all know that the best way to sell somebody a car is to build rapport. And one of the easiest ways to build rapport is to find common ground with your customer. And what better way to do that than assigning leads to people that have shared backgrounds and life experiences? The last example I want to give here is on a specific model of car. For those of you who own a Chevrolet franchise, you probably have some salespeople that are big Corvette enthusiasts. Well, if that's the case, why not assign those leads to those people specifically? They have the product knowledge, they are able to get the customer excited, and you know from experience that they're always great at closing the deal when we put the leads into their hands. So everything that we just talked about here is going to have a couple of major impacts. It's going to improve our overall lead response time because we're getting to the customer faster because we're assigning a lead to the person who's ready to go. It's also going to improve our customer engagement because we're putting the right person on the right job. Now, I recently had one of my larger dealer groups go through with me and unify their lead routing process at all of their stores. And in the first 2 months of properly assigning leads to the right person for the job, they saw their internet close rate improve from 7% to 9%. And that added a considerable amount of profit to the bottom line. And those are exactly the results we're looking for. So now that we've talked a little bit about what happens when a new lead arrives, let's take a minute to talk about what happens after it's assigned to the right person. So does anybody remember the good old days of the car business when we did all of our follow-up off the paper logs and spent the better part of our day chasing salespeople around the showroom, trying to glue them to their chair and make their follow-up calls? Well, some of you may miss those days, but let's be real. Micromanaging our salespeople is a waste of time, and it costs you money because you could be doing something more productive. So if you ever feel like you're wasting too much time micromanaging your salespeople, it's time to upgrade our follow-up processes. Now, one of our roles as managers is to delegate activity to ensure that results are achieved. But this is time-consuming, and it doesn't always produce the results we want. But there is a better way. Think of the follow-up processes in your CRM as the coach that calls the plays. All you have to do is give the coach the playbook and let them go to work for you. Now, this is going to improve your results in a few ways. One, you're going to have more consistent follow-up. Two, we're going to have less wasted time micromanaging our salespeople that we can focus on something more productive. Three, we're going to be able to hold people more accountable. And four, we're going to have better efficiency, and we all know that leads to more sales. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that the coach calls the right play. And what that means is making sure that he's asking the salesperson to take the right action. So do you guys ever feel like your message just isn't being delivered? Well, maybe it's the type of message you're sending. Look at the example above. This is outbound and inbound activity for a month at a sample dealership. As you can see in the example above, the dealership made 2,100 phone calls, and they only had about 270 returned. Now, they were a little bit better on emails. They sent about 7,800 emails and had about 1,000 returned. But if you take a look at the text messaging, this is really where it gets interesting. They sent about 2,000 text messages and had close to 900 responses. So ask yourself, do these results look different than your stores? And do they really surprise you? Think of how you communicate with your friends, family, and coworkers. I'm willing to bet it is mostly text. I like to think, for example, if I were going to ask my wife what she wants to do for dinner tonight, well, I certainly wouldn't email her, I'd text her. And I'm willing to bet your customers would do the same thing. Now, this store that we're using an example is really no different than a lot of other stores. They have a response rate on phone calls of about 12%. The response rate on emails is about 13%, but their texting response rate is 43%. So the question then becomes, are we asking our salespeople to reach out to the customer with the communication type that really gets us the best results? Well, what we want to consider doing is assigning follow-up tasks based on the best return of our salesperson's efforts. So for example, if we take a look at the examples here, these are 2 phone lead follow-up processes in just the first 5 days of them. Now, the example on the left looks pretty darn good on the surface. When we take a look at it, what we'll notice is that we're asking the sales rep immediately via an alert to update the CRM and make sure we've got the proper vehicle in there. And if they haven't set an appointment, to game plan with their manager to see what they can do to move the customer into the store. The next day, we ask them to make a phone call. The following day, an email. The following day after that, a phone call. We give the customer a break so we don't overwhelm them. And then we ask them to send an email on day 5. So on the surface, it looks like we're asking the sales rep to follow up 4 times in 5 days. Well, if we take a step deeper and we look at something called a contact info capture report, what you're going to notice is that at this store, year to date, they've had 608 phone pops. And of all those phone pops, they've only managed to collect an email address from about 15% of the people. Well, that shouldn't come as any surprise because the customer's calling on the phone and salespeople are notoriously bad at even getting a phone number sometimes on a phone pop. But because that's the case, that means 85% of the time, these 2 email tasks that we're assigning aren't going to happen because our CRM isn't going to ask a sales rep to take action that they can't take. So now, 85% of the time, we're really only asking the sales rep to follow up twice in the first 5 days. And I think we all know that a sales rep, as time goes on with the lead, can become discouraged and maybe wouldn't even complete some of their longer-term follow-up. So as a result, we want to look at maybe reformatting this to a process that makes more sense based on the customer that is calling us. Now, if we look at the example on the right, this is a more thoughtful follow-up process. We still have the same alert, but what you'll notice is 2 hours after that phone pop, we're asking the sales rep to reach out to that customer via text messaging. Well, why are we doing that? Well, one, we know that we have a 43% response rate, so there's a good chance the customer will engage with us. And 2, the customer shopping didn't stop when they hung up the phone. It continued. So it's really good to get the salesperson engaged early and often, and it is very likely that they'll complete this task because the customer is still fresh in their mind and they're not discouraged because of a couple fruitless follow-up attempts. Now, the following day, we ask them to make a phone call. The following day after that, a text message. The following day, a phone call. We give the customer a break on day 4. And then on day 5, we ask the system to send an automated text message to the customer to cover our bases in case the customer has never responded and the sales rep has maybe given up. But as you can see, having the coach call the right play allows us the best chance of winning the game and doing business with our customer. So now we've got leads being assigned to the right person who's ready to respond to the customer now. We're asking our team to follow up the customer in the most effective way. Now, what I found helpful is matching our lead follow-up process to the time it takes to sell a lead type or a lead source. We can't have a one-size-fits-all approach to our leads. The length of our follow-up process really needs to be based on where the lead came from and how long the life of that lead generally is. This is the most effective use of our time. Now, the benefits to doing this are going to be better customer engagement because we're taking the right action at the right time. We're going to have better sales team efficiency because we're not asking the sales rep to complete a fruitless or a redundant follow-up task. And because we're taking the right action at the right time and have a thoughtful follow-up process, we're going to improve our closing rates. So one of the questions we get a lot in performance management is, what is the right length of time to follow up with a lead? Well, a process that's too short really doesn't give us enough time to reach the customer and close the deal. And a process that's too long can really bog down our salespeople with meaningless tasks that impact their ability to follow up with fresher leads that have a better chance to close. So how do you as a dealership even know if the process is too long or too short? Well, in the example here, we're looking at something called a lead source performance report. And what we're looking at specifically is a lead type of internet leads and looking at all of the sales that have happened year to date. So what you'll notice is at this store, the store year to date has sold 414 internet leads. Now, of those 414 internet leads, 376 of them happened in the first 30 days. Any time after day 30, the store only sold 38 cars. That means 90% of what the dealership sells happens in the first 30 days. Well, why does this matter? Well, if you don't have your follow-up process tailored to the life of the lead, we may not be asking enough from our sales staff, or we may be asking too much from them. For example, in this scenario, if we had a lead follow-up process that was only for 15 days, well, our leads on average take 30 days to close. That's where 90% of those sales happen. A 15-day follow-up process just isn't enough time. On that same note, because most of our sales happen in the first 30 days, a 60-day follow-up process probably doesn't make sense either, because we're asking to have the sales rep take and make tasks and follow up with the customer when it's really unlikely that we're ever going to sell them a car. So we have to ask ourselves, could these sales reps' time be better allocated to following up with the fresh leads that 90% of their sales come from? And I think the answer is yes. So an appropriate time frame for this particular store would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 35 days. Yes, we still want to sell the cars to the customers after day 30, but that can be accomplished with a custom long-term follow-up process. So the next thing we want to talk about is maybe assigning a specific follow-up process to a specific lead source. Now, I like to use the example of a KBB ICO lead because most dealerships are familiar with them. And one of the things that we have to understand about salespeople is if a salesperson really doesn't believe in the task we're assigning them, they're not going to do it. Well, we all know that KBB ICO certificates expire after 7 days. And a customer has to take some form of additional action after day 7 if they want to continue re-engaging. That's either going online and reevaluating their car or physically stepping into the store. Well, your sales reps know this. So if we're assigning a lot of manual follow-up tasks to the sales rep after day 7, it's really unlikely that they're going to complete them because they don't believe in them. So what we might want to consider doing is taking this specific lead source and automating the process with text and emails after day 7. That way, as a dealership, you're still delivering the message to the customer that you want, but we're not wasting the salesperson's time on low probability customers so that they can focus on the people that are more likely to buy or sell us a vehicle. Now, all of this is going to result in more efficiency, more appointments, and ultimately more opportunities to do business. Now, despite all of our best efforts, not every lead ends in a sale. Sometimes we are going to hit a dead end. And when that happens, we need to have an exit strategy to deal with leads that have reached the end of the road. And what that means is having our leads terminate in a lost status at the end of our follow-up process. Now, what are some of the symptoms of a process that doesn't end in lost? Well, that could be active leads without future follow-up or lots of duplicate leads. Now, before we dive into this, we need to take a second to understand lead statuses. There are 4 statuses that a lead can be in. We can have an active lead, meaning that the CRM still thinks that we're engaging with the customer and following up with them. We can have a lost lead, which means the CRM thinks we're no longer engaging or following up with the customer. We can have a bad lead, which is either a duplicate lead or a customer with bad contact information, or we can have a sold lead. So why does having a lost process matter? Well, now that we understand lead statuses, we can talk about an example of what happens and what the consequences are if we don't have a lead that properly terminates and lost. So let's say we have a lead follow-up process that runs for 30 days. And after day 30, we don't assign any additional follow-up to the salesperson, but that lead process doesn't terminate and lost. Now on day 60, the customer goes online and they submit a brand new lead. Well, because the lead is still active, the CRM still thinks we're engaging with the customer, even though we're not. And instead of that lead being assigned to a new salesperson who's on shift and ready to handle the customer, that lead goes back to the original salesman as a duplicate, and that person may or may not even be available to respond to the customer. Now, if we had had this process properly end in lost, the CRM would have recognized that you're no longer engaging with the customer, and it would have processed it as a brand new lead. Now, this would have forced the lead into the new lead assignment rules and lead follow-up processes that we've just built, and that's going to give us the best shot of contacting the customer to make the deal. So the benefits to doing this is that it allows us to allow the system to clean out the customers that your salespeople are unlikely to purchase a vehicle from or to sell a car to. and it allows them to focus their efforts on the customers that they still have a good chance with. It's also going to reduce duplicate leads and allow a fresh set of eyes on a customer when they're re-engaging with your store. So we've covered a lot so far. Let's take a moment to review. Here are the upgrades we've made to our CRM. We've got our salespeople trained. They have proper hours and alerts set up. Their leads are being assigned to people who are on shift, and the leads are being assigned to the right person based on the lead type or lead source. We have a thoughtful process delegating follow-up in the right format at the right time, and now we have a plan for dead-end deals. So now we need to update the message we're delivering to the customer, and that means taking a look at our email templates. So let's talk email templates for a minute. You as managers don't like them, customers don't like them, and yet despite all of our best efforts, salespeople continue to use them. Well, why do our salespeople use templates? Well, there's a few reasons. One, they may not have the confidence to compose a good email on their own. Two, they may have a customer that's never responded to them, or maybe the customer asked a question and they don't even know how to reach back out to them. Three, they could have become complacent and lazy, and they're just looking to do as little as possible just to keep you, their boss, off their back. So what can we do about it? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to take a look at what good and bad emails look like. So we're going to take a look at an example of a bad email over on the left from a sales rep named James Salesman. Let's go ahead and read this email. Jesse, you sent us a lead about buying a vehicle. My name is James, and I'm a salesperson here at ROI Motors. Call me on my cell if you have any questions. Would you like to come in for a test drive? Let me know. Thanks, James Salesman. Well, does this email look like something you've seen sent at your store? Maybe you've seen worse. And there are a lot of things wrong with this email. The first thing is it's missing the cell phone number. It looks like they may have attempted to put an autofill field in there that's not working. The next part is this email is not composed well. Now, to be fair, we're not looking for college level formatting, but it also shouldn't look like a toddler composed the email either. This in many cases is your first impression. So does it look professional? And is this the foot you want to lead with? Finally, there's absolutely no call to action in this email to drive the customer further down the sales funnel. Yeah, we're asking the person to come in for a test drive, but I got news for you. If your internet lead wanted to come in for a test drive, they would have showed up at your dealership and been a walk-in customer. The reason they submitted an internet lead is because they aren't comfortable or they don't have enough information to say yes to visiting your store. So how do we rectify that? Well, one of the big advantages to utilizing good email templates is that we can control the message that we're sending to the customer. So let's take a look at an example here. Hello, Jesse. Thanks for reaching out about our 2018 Toyota Highlander. That's a great vehicle to consider. My name is James Salesman, and I'm going to be your personal sales consultant here at ROI Motors. I want to make sure you have my personal cell phone so you can reach out to me with any questions or specific needs you may have. That number is, and a cell phone number. Now, many of our internet customers want to get as much done as possible from home before actually stopping in. The following links can be used to complete everything short of coming in to take delivery. So feel free to get started at your leisure. You can see we've got a link to the trade evaluation, a link to our credit application, and a link to schedule a test drive. And in the meantime, if you have any questions about the vehicle, here's some additional information on the specific vehicle you inquired about with a link to the VIN brochure. Finally, are there any specific questions I can address for you right now regarding the vehicle, incentives, or trade-ins? I look forward to speaking with you soon. James Salesman with a proper email signature. Now, as we look at this, the first thing that we should notice is that all of the information in this email is accurate and the email is free from grammatical error. Now, this is one of the big benefits to utilizing a template. We eliminate the biggest problem with composing emails, and that's the actual person composing it. The next thing you'll notice about this is this email is chock full of autofill fields. Now, some of you may not know, but our system allows for us to automatically populate certain pieces of information into an email template so that we can use it universally across all aspects of our store. We can populate things like the salesperson's phone number and name, like the vehicle the customer inquired about. Or in this example, we can have links to drive the customer into your sales process for like the online credit application, or to schedule a test drive, or to value their trade. Now, the other thing you're going to notice about this is that there is a clear call to action that drives the customer down the sales funnel. We know the customer didn't want to stop in the store, but we're offering them all of the things they can do to eliminate the amount of time they have to spend at the store before they actually arrive. So the question is, if you got both of these emails, who would you be replying to? So as we talk about this a little bit deeper, think of your template library like the garage on your house. And when your garage gets cluttered, it can be really hard to find the right tool for the job. But when our garage gets cluttered up, we don't board it up and never enter it again. We clean it out and organize it. So we need to take the same approach with our email templates. So the first thing we need to do is we need to have a plan. And that plan needs to start with knowing what email templates are most commonly used by your team and making a list of those to update because they're going to have the most immediate impact. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Mr. Vin Solutions guy, I have been into my email template library. There are literally hundreds of templates for me to look at. How am I ever going to go through and edit all of these things? I don't have the time in my day. Well, I would agree with you. But there is a really simple solution to this. Under Insights, we offer a report called an Email Subject Line Performance Report. And what this will allow you to do is to see the most commonly used emails by the subject. Now, what I did is a very simple email look for this report for a dealership for the entire year. And what I did is I sorted it by the most commonly sent email. And as you take a look at the example here, there were almost 18,000 emails that had the same subject line sent to customers. Well, this is the list right here. These are the emails that I need to update immediately so I can have an immediate impact, because look at the first one. That's hit 18,000 customers' inboxes. We better make darn sure that that's a good email template. So that leads us to the next step in our plan, which is to decide as a team what you want your message to be and make it consistent. Part of the reason that fast food chains work and are successful is because the burger that you get in Iowa is the same burger that you get in Kentucky. The food you're delivering should be the same regardless of who the chef is. The final step here is to make sure you have a plan to go through and update your template garage regularly. Now, I feel one of the best practices here is to go in and revisit all of my email templates at least once a year to make sure that our message is evolving with the marketplace. And I would challenge some of you to think right now, when was the last time you went into your email template library and updated your message? If it hasn't been in the last year or two, I promise you, your message isn't in line with where the marketplace is now. Think of all the changes that have happened in the last couple of years. If your message hasn't evolved, you're going to be left behind by your competitors. Okay, we've got all of the major reconstruction done in our CRM remodel. We're on to our last step, and that is to clean out the clutter and finish organizing the house. So let me ask you, has anyone here ever gone to merge duplicate customers, and upon seeing the number of potential duplicates, you experienced any of the following? Nausea, trembling, anxiety, heart palpitations, fits of rage, or sweaty palms? Well, if you have, you're not alone. And the good news is there's 3 really easy things that we can do right now to clean up that data. That would be a fuzzy match, having a plan to merge our duplicate customers, and having a plan to address and manage our overdue tasks. So let's explore this a little bit. The first question we get a lot as performance managers is, why on earth do I have so many duplicate customers? Well, there are a lot of reasons for this. This could be anything from changing customer information to typos, or to the most common, which is a commonly used email or phone number. Now, for instance, if a salesperson puts in the email address of don't email@don'temail.com, On every customer he can't get an email address on, well, he's now created potential duplicates of each one of those customers with each other. Another example would be the dealership phone number, which oftentimes salespeople put in a customer profile when they don't collect a phone number from the customer. Now, issues like this can literally account for thousands and thousands of potential duplicates at your store. And I promise you, this is happening at your store right now, and it's costing you money. It's costing you money because we're wasting salespeople's time when we have two salespeople working the same customer. And it's costing you money because of lost future opportunities that we can't follow up with because we just don't have the right data. You worked really hard to bring these customers into your CRM, and you spent a ton of money to do it. We need to make sure you're getting the most out of that. So the first place we're going to start is with a fuzzy match. And to do that, we're going to reach out to our store's performance manager. And what our store's performance manager is going to do is they're going to get our development team involved. And they're going to look at all of your customers in the CRM, and they are going to find the most commonly used emails, like the do not email at donotemail.com or the dealership phone number. And they're going to allow you, by providing you a list of these, to choose which ones you want to remove from the CRM. Now, by doing this, we're going to have much cleaner data to start with because we're not going to have a whole bunch of bad duplicate or potential duplicate customers. And I recently had a dealership that did this process with me. Now, when we started this process, they had 38,000 potential duplicates. But upon review and doing a fuzzy match, what we found is that we were able to reduce that duplicate count by over 20,000 people to down around 18,000 customers. Now, I know that still seems like a daunting task to overcome, and it is still a lot of work, but that is a really good example of how many potential duplicates you may have in your system just because of bad data right now. So now that we've got that information cleaned up, we need to establish a plan to merge our duplicates. And that plan has to be timely and consistent. I recommend doing this at least once a week. And at that same store, after we established and got rid of all of those bad customers and built out a plan to merge duplicates with the management team, we discovered that most of the duplicates that were being created didn't in fact come from the sales team, but they came from the service department. The service advisors weren't asking people for emails, and they were putting a bogus email in every time, and it was always the same email. So because we discovered that, we were able to fix these upstream problems. And by doing these two things to help clean up the data, this is going to help you make better marketing decisions. It's going to help you follow up with your customers better. And it's ultimately going to help you buy, sell, and service more vehicles and put more money onto the bottom line. So now that we've fixed a lot of the upstream problems that have caused tasks to pile up in a salesperson's follow-up plan, we need to talk about a strategy to address the stale and overdue tasks. Now, in the example above, a lot of you may look at this and say, wow, that looks like my store. We've got a whole lot of overdue tasks, but I don't even know what to do. Well, I've got a solution, but before we talk about that, we've got to talk about the big reason that we got here in the first place. And the reason we're here is because of us as a management team. If you have overdue tasks, it's because you aren't holding your salespeople accountable. Now, I would ask, at your store, do you expect your salesperson to turn a customer to a manager when they don't buy a car? I know at every store I've ever worked at, that was the expectation. And I'll tell you what happened the very first time I let a customer go without turning them to a manager. My boss pulled me in his office and he said, Jesse, the next time you let a customer go without them talking to a manager, you can leave with the customer and not come back. Now, I'm not saying we got to be a jerk to our salespeople. Far from it. But we do need to be crystal clear on what our expectations are and crystal clear about what the consequences are if we don't perform. And my boss was crystal clear about his expectations. He told me he expected me to turn every single customer. He was also crystal clear about what the consequences were and how he'd hold me accountable. He'd fire me. So we have to take that same approach with our follow-up tasks, because at your dealership, you either have rules or you don't have rules. So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what do I do with all these overdue tasks? I can't have my salespeople spend days going through them. And I agree 100%. It took a long time to get here with this many overdue tasks. and it would take a long time to undo the problem. But there is an easy way. We can consider giving our salespeople a one-time get-out-of-jail-free card by clearing all of your sales team's overdue tasks. Now, if we're going to do this, we have to make sure this is a one-time thing. We don't want to recommend regular use because, like your kids, if you bail your salesperson out every time they get themselves in trouble, either through their actions or inaction, they'll never know what to do when you're not there to help them, and they'll never correct the behavior. So we need to show them we care. And sometimes we show people we care with a little tough love. And that means accountability. We're here to begin with because we weren't holding our salespeople accountable to completing tasks. This has to be a non-negotiable, and we have to demand that all of our tasks are completed and that when our sales rep leaves for the day, they have 0 overdue and 0 current tasks. This is the only way we can prevent ourselves from repeating history. Now, what are the benefits of doing this? Well, the first benefit is your salespeople is going to feel a lot better about the progress that they're making daily. Look at the example above. This one guy has 2,400 overdue tasks. If they sat down today and spent 8 hours completing as many as they could probably only get through 400 or 500, and they would still have almost 2,000 tasks left to complete. That's pretty discouraging to come in every day and feel like you're never making headway. Now, what is encouraging is being able to work down to 0 every day. Now, the big benefit to doing this for you as a management team is going to be that now you have good visibility to see who is and isn't working. It'll be abundantly clear. If you have overdue tasks and you weren't off the day before, you weren't performing your job. Now it's time to have that one-on-one meeting and hold that salesperson accountable to the expectations that we've clearly defined. The next big benefit to this is that our hottest tasks with our hottest customers are not going to get buried in stale and overdue tasks assigned to a salesperson days, weeks, or even months earlier. And when the salesperson is completing the right task at the right time, and you're holding them accountable, they can't help but sell more cars, and you can't help but make more money. So naturally, the next question is, where do we go from here? Well, in the beginning, I told you that we said performance managers are like trusted contractors that can guide you through the process of your CRM remodel. Well, if anything we talked about today piqued your interest or made you think, I know this, but I'm not doing this, or I'm doing this, but I think I could do it better, now is the time to reach out to your store's performance manager. We're here to help. We're here to help with processes and best practices like we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes. We're here to help with reporting assistance like scheduling reports for automated delivery to track results or identifying the reports that need to be monitored on a daily basis like our email and text replies. We can help with team utilization like teaching managers how to identify customers who are slipping out of follow-up or teaching your salespeople to better prospect their database. And at the end of the day, it's all about helping you as a dealership find more car deals. That is our primary role as performance managers. So maybe you're engaging with your PM regularly. Maybe it's been a while since you talked. Either way, now is the time to get started on upgrading your CRM for future success.